My wife claimed a solo beach reset and slept with her ex, so I recorded the affair, locked her out overnight, and took sole ownership of the house. She stood at the doorway with a beach bag slung over her shoulder, sunglasses pushed up in her hair like some damn rom-com protagonist escaping to find herself. The smell of her oversprayed perfume hit me before her voice did. I'm going to the beach house this weekend alone. I need time to recenter. Don't wait up. Re-enter. That was a new one. Last month it was detox. Before that, spiritual reset, whatever label she slapped on it, the routine was the same. Pack light, wear less, drive fast, and come back smelling like sandalwood in someone else's body wash. I didn't blink. I didn't ask questions. I just smiled from my seat at the breakfast table, folded the newspaper I wasn't reading, and said, "Enjoy the solitude." She smirked like she'd won some invisible round in a game I wasn't supposed to know I was playing. Then she was gone, heels clacking down the hallway, the front door closing with that same rehearsed click she always used when she thought she was being elegant. But here's the thing. After 27 years, you stop reacting. You start recording. See, I wasn't always this calm 2 years ago, when I first felt something shift. When she started dressing like a cruise line divorcee and changed her passcode 2 times in a week. I did what most men do. I doubted myself, blamed work stress, blamed hormones. Hell, I even blamed me. Maybe I'd gone too quiet, too gray. I didn't want to see what was right in front of me. But the moment that tipped it all, Valentine's Day last year, I came home early with flowers because I'm an idiot like that, and found the fireplace lit, 2 wine glasses out, and Barry White playing on her Bluetooth speaker. Romantic, right? Except I wasn't supposed to be there. She wasn't expecting me. And the second she heard the door, she turned white as drywall and knocked one of the glasses over. I was just celebrating myself, she said. She never drank red, hated the stains. That night, I started watching quietly. I didn't confront her, didn't cry. I started keeping a mental record of her language, the way she hesitated before answering basic questions, how her phone was suddenly always face down. I watched her pause in doorways like she was waiting for applause. I watched her check her reflection in windows that had no business being mirrors. Women don't do that when they're in love. They do that when they're performing. So, when she brought up the solo trip, I let her believe I believed it. That Friday morning, she put on lip gloss before a 3-hour drive to be alone. That was her final audition, and I was a damn good audience. I even helped her with the bag. "You sure you don't want company?" I asked deadpan. "I hear the gulls are especially romantic this time of year." She laughed. "Don't be silly. I need time to breathe." "Sure, sweetheart. So do snakes before they shed." What she didn't know, what she'll never know, unless she's reading this now with her jaw on the floor, is that I'd already taken PTO. I'd already packed my own bag, and I'd already left the house 3 hours earlier that morning before the sun came up, long before she finished curling her hair for a man she thought was still her little secret, because I was the one who turned the sheets at the beach house that day. I was the one who opened all the windows to let the ocean air in, and I was the one who set the stage for the kind of weekend you don't forget, not because it was romantic, but because it would burn her memory of that place to ash. The beach house wasn't her hideaway. Not anymore. It was mine. There's something strangely intimate about betrayal when you choose not to interrupt it, not fight it, not shout over it, just sit back and catalog it, like an archaeologist brushing dirt off someone else's ruins. 3 months before that beach bag hit our tile floor like a punchline, I started keeping notes. Not on my phone, never digital. Too easy to slip, sink, leak. No, mine was analog. Black moleskin, hardbound, looked boring, respectable, like something a retiree might use to track golf scores or blood pressure. I kept it under the cushion of the old armchair in my shed in a plastic Ziploc just behind the tool catalog she never touched. She wouldn't find it. She didn't even know I still used paper. Each page had a date, a time, a name, and then a brief description. January 3rd, lunch at Baxter's on Fremont, 2 o'clock in the evening. January 13th, sister's house, trip, return Sunday, 10 o'clock 48 in the evening, hair curled, luggage lighter. February 2nd, Stephen's truck, blue Ford, license 65J, parked 2 blocks down at 11 o'clock 43 in the evening. Stephen, I hadn't heard that name in 20 years, her high school first love, the one who never really got her, the one who'd reached out on Facebook when his 3rd marriage hit a wall. I found that message buried in her deleted folder one night while fixing her printer because yes, she still uses a Yahoo email account and clicks on cat gifs that crash her system. The subject line, "Crazy thinking of you again after all these years." She never replied, not directly. But 3 days later, she bought new lingerie and told me she was going to that spa retreat with her cousin in Santa Cruz. Sure, with lace. The receipts were the easy part. She used the joint card like she was daring me to notice. Hotel stays under her maiden name, gas stations off the freeway. I'd driven with her 100 times. Once she used my rewards account for a dinner in Monterey accidentally, she'd later claim. That was the day I bought the notebook. I wasn't gathering for court. I was directing a play. Every scribble, every timestamp was a stage cue. I timed her patterns. She left 14 minutes after every, "I'll just be a second" text. Her phone's GPS betrayed her laziness, never disabling location sharing with the car's app. I'd watch from my shed, sipping coffee as the little dot moved down Highway 1 right to the same damn turnoff. Each time my pen moved, ink gliding, calm hand, steady. But what made the notebook powerful wasn't the obvious. It was the absurd, the careless. March 9th, left with yoga mat, returned with wet hair and no 10 lines. March 16th, said, "I'll bring wine to my sister's." Wine still in the pantry. She thought I was asleep most nights. She thought I was aging into oblivion, distracted by football reruns and the lawnmower's carburetor. What she didn't realize was that every bored glance I gave her was measured. Every nod was logged. I was soaking in her arrogance like acid etching steel. The show wasn't for her either. It was for Julia, Steven's current wife, the one who didn't post photos, the one who'd gone strangely quiet on social media right around the time my wife started smiling at her phone like it told jokes I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't call Julia right away. I waited until the notebook had at least a dozen clean, deadly entries. Until the evidence wasn't just damning, it was undeniable. I wanted her to hear not just what I thought was happening, but what I knew. I wanted her to see that this wasn't about jealousy or ego or midlife insecurity. It was math. It was chemistry. It was engineering. I'd built bridges that carried semi-trucks across rivers. She really thought I couldn't reverse engineer an affair. On the last page of that notebook, in bold block letters, I wrote, April 14th, beach house departure. 10 o'clock, 6 in the morning. Below that, a single line. She thinks I won't be there. She was right about one thing. She needed the ocean. But by the time she got to it, the tide had already turned. She picked up on the second ring. That's the kind of thing you never forget. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's not. No hesitation, no screaming, just a soft, tired hello, like she'd been bracing for this call longer than I had. "Julia?" I asked, trying not to sound like a lunatic. "My name's Mark." Well, I think you know why I'm calling." Silence, but not the panicked kind. Not the kind of silence that hides. Just this slow exhale like air leaving a balloon that never got to fly. "I thought so," she said, flat, not angry, not shocked, resigned. That hit harder than anything. I'd rehearsed it in my head a dozen ways. I expected yelling, maybe accusations. "You must be mistaken. Steven would never," all the usual defenses people throw up when their little illusion cracks. But Julia was already halfway through the wall, and she hadn't even looked down yet. "I'm sorry," I said, suddenly ashamed of my own calm. "I didn't want to drag you into something painful, but I thought you deserve the truth." She was quiet for a second. "I already had the truth, Mark," she said. "What I didn't have was proof." I told her about the notebook, the GPS locks, the receipts. I kept it clinical, just facts, timelines, times of day. Her voice didn't waver, but I heard her kid crying in the background. Then a cabinet door slammed. She'd muted the call for a moment, came back with a colder tone. "I have 2 boys," she said, 10 and 7. "I'm not in a place to make this messy, but I'm not going to sit and swallow it either." That's when something shifted. This wasn't about pain anymore. This wasn't therapy. This was strategy. I told her about the beach house. I told her they were headed there this weekend, that I'd be there first, that I had keys, that it was legally mine, that I'd set up cameras, that I wasn't planning to yell or cry or make a scene. And she said without even a breath, "Do you want company? We plan like soldiers, like chief executive officers, like people who were done being lied to." I sent her the photos I'd taken the week before. Steven in his usual parking spot down the block from our place, the one where he waited until my wife rounded the corner before pulling out to coincidentally run into her at that art gallery. I sent her the screenshot of the receipt, her husband's name, on a $228 dinner tab billed to a place they'd gone on their anniversary 2 years earlier. Julia, she didn't cry. She laughed, a dry, brittle sound that cracked like a knuckle. "He told me that was a client dinner." She said it was this investor from Los Angeles. I remember he smelled like cinnamon that night. New cologne. He never wears cologne. I paused. "My wife bought cinnamon body wash from Sephora last month. Said it was just a sample." Dead silence. Then Julia whispered, They're not even trying. That's what bonded us. Not the pain. Not even the betrayal. It was the insult. The sheer stupidity of it. The way they both treated us like background props in their personal soap opera, like we were too old, too dull, too blind to connect the dots. They didn't cheat with cunning. They cheated with contempt. And that's a whole different fuel. Julia was a human resources director. Had been for 18 years. She'd seen every excuse under the sun, every fake sick day, every it's not what it looks like. She started talking logistics, timelines, legal implications. I didn't even need to lead. Give me the weekend, I said. You'll want to see it yourself. She didn't hesitate. Tell me when and where. And that was it. By the end of the call, we had a plan, a literal floor plan. She'd come to the beach house that morning. I'd let her in before they arrived. She'd wait in the guest room while I monitored the footage. She wanted to hear it with her own ears. Wanted to see his eyes when he realized he wasn't alone. Two people, same wound, same anger, one difference. I had the house, she had the courtroom. And together, we had nothing left to lose. The drive down Highway 1 felt different this time. Not because of the view, I'd driven it hundreds of times, but because every mile I passed meant I was closing in on something irreversible. The trail doesn't burn hot, not at this stage. It chills, makes the world feel colder, sharper. Every tree, every coastline bend felt like it was leaning in, watching me like nature knew something was about to go down. I pulled into the gravel lot just after 8 o'clock in the morning. Early light on the porch, salt in the air, that familiar creak of the front gate. Funny how something can feel like home and foreign ground at the same time. The house looked exactly how we left it 3 months ago. Her decorative driftwood wreath still hung on the door, seashells glued to it with that amateur hot glue arrogance. A stupid symbol, really. I left it there. It would serve a better purpose soon. Inside was still pristine because I'd made sure the cleaning crew came last week. She thought I didn't check the email notifications. She never noticed I reactivated the Nest account. She thought the beach house was her escape. She didn't realize it had become my stage. I opened every blind. Natural light exposes everything. I changed the sheets on the master bed. Ivory linen, soft blue trim, her favorite set. Let her walk into familiarity. Let her get comfortable. I fluffed the pillows, even folded her robe at the foot. No detail too small. Then came the cameras. 2, one in the corner shelf of the living room, disguised in a fake succulent she'd once bought during her boho phase. The other hidden in the antique clock on the dresser in the bedroom. Perfect angle, audio synced, triggered by motion. They weren't the cheap, blurry kind. They were the kind you get when you plan ahead and know you'll only have one shot. I checked the feeds 2 times. Sound came through clear. I could hear the wind chimes outside. Good. Next. The fridge stocked just enough to look spontaneous. Wine. Strawberries. That weird cheese she always said reminded her of Italy, even though she's never actually been. I placed 2 wine glasses on the coffee table. And then I waited. Julia texted me from the parking area at 10:23 in the morning. I stepped out, unlocked the back door, and let her in without a word. She looked rough, not unkempt, just drained, the kind of face that doesn't cry anymore. She carried no bags, just her phone and a manila envelope I didn't ask about. I led her to the guest room. This room has a vent, I said. You'll hear everything. She nodded. Perfect. We didn't talk much after that, just 2 soldiers in a foxhole. We listened to the clock. We stared out at the calm waves. She sat on the edge of the bed with her arms folded and eyes fixed ahead, like she was already visualizing the explosion. I checked the notebook one last time. Her ETA was 4:45 in the evening. She was never early, always just fashionably late, like she was timing her entrances for a movie score no one else could hear. At 4:52 in the evening, the gravel crunched. I was already in the guest room. Blinds cracked just enough. Julia sat beside me. We didn't speak. From the corner of the curtain, I saw them step out. She wore her tan summer dress, the one with the split down the side that made her feel dangerous. Stephen was in board shorts and a smug grin, holding her overnight bag like it was a surprise he earned. She leaned in and kissed him on the cheek. Not on the lips. That was for the bedroom. That was for later. They walked in laughing. She dropped her bag. He said, "Still smells like you." She replied, "That's because I never left." I pressed the record button. Julia clenched the edge of the comforter until her knuckles went white. And in that moment, it wasn't anger I felt. It was precision. All that dread, all that nausea, all those sleepless nights melted into a surgical coldness. We weren't just watching a betrayal unfold. We were watching them bury themselves. The walls in that beach house were never thick. I remembered that every time we tried to argue without the neighbors catching wind. Every time we thought we were whispering discreetly but ended up reliving the conversation at brunch the next day. My wife used to joke that the place had ears. She had no idea how prophetic that was. Now it was our ears, mine and Julia's, pressed to the guest room vent as the two of them performed, their little fantasy in surround sound. "God, you still pour wine like a college kid," she giggled from the kitchen. Stephen's voice floated back, full of smug bravado. "You still blush like one." Clink, pour. The slosh of overpriced red wine into 2 oversized glasses. And then the worst part, the silence between the words. The comfortable silence. That's what got under my skin. That familiarity, that confidence, the way they settled in. Julia didn't speak for a while, just sat motionless on the edge of the bed, hands clasped in her lap. Then softly she muttered, "He brought our son here once." I turned to her. "What?" She didn't look at me, just stared ahead like she was watching some reel in her head. "He said he had to meet a client down here. Took Lucas with him, said it would be fun bonding. They spent the night in this house." The edges of my vision went hot. My jaw tensed so hard I felt a nerve twitch in my temple. The idea that Stephen had paraded his affair not just around my life but hers, her family, her child in this space, this sanctuary of lies, it tipped something in me. Not rage, not yet. Something cleaner, harder, sharpened. I checked the clock. 6:19 in the evening. From the other room, laughter spilled again. This time softer, more intimate. "You remember that weekend we spent here in 1998? My wife cooed. "Stephen, that hurricane didn't stop us. We were soaked anyway." I felt Julia stir beside me, and I wished for 1 second that they could hear us, that the house could speak back, that every smug little whisper they let slip would echo with our breathing, our silence, our eyes watching them from 5 feet away. Instead, we just kept listening. They moved to the couch. The cushions creaked. His shoes thudded to the floor. I imagined him stretching out like a king in his castle, never realizing the floor was full of traps. My wife asked if he still had those magic fingers. He replied with something that made Julia squeeze the blanket so tight the fabric snapped. They were so relaxed, so damn confident in their secrecy, and it was that confidence that was going to hang them both. We weren't looking for drama. No door slamming, no Jerry Springer moment. This wasn't some TikTok spectacle. It was evidence. It was documentation. And tonight, they'd supply their own news with every word, every moan, every slip of the tongue that wasn't meant for ears like ours. At 7:04 in the evening, my wife said something that made the air in the room shift. "I don't care what it costs. I could live here with you, forever." Julia reached into her pocket and handed me her phone without a word. The live recording app was running, time-stamped, clear audio paired with the footage from the bedroom camera. "It would be devastating." "You think they'll be dumb enough to use their real names?" I whispered. Julia let out a joyless, hollow sound, something between a scoff and a death rattle. "He's already left the light on in the bedroom. They're not thinking at all." I looked back through the cracked blinds. The sun was setting now, slicing through the horizon like a blade. The whole beach turned orange, then red, blood red. "They'll go to dinner soon," I said. "We stay put," she nodded. "Because this night wasn't our climax. It was our documentation. It was their confession performed in stereo, narrated in real time, preserved forever. And the moment they stepped out that front door, thinking the only eyes on them were the seagulls above, that's when we'd strike. At 6:58, in the evening sharp, the front door opened and shut again. Their voices trailed off into the breeze. Stephen saying something asinine about oysters being nature's Viagra, and her fake laugh echoing down the steps like wind chimes made of glass and fraud. I waited 30 seconds, not out of fear but ritual. Then I stood up, rolled my sleeves, and looked at Julia. "Now," I said. She followed me down the hallway in silence, barefoot like a ghost. The living room was still warm from their presence. Her perfume lingered, cheap but heavy, like the lies she'd told over breakfast every Sunday. Stephen's sandals were by the couch. His phone was charging on the armrest. Bold move considering how many texts were probably buried in it. I didn't touch it, not yet. Instead, I walked straight to the hallway closet, third shelf, behind a stack of old board games. There, built into the back panel, was the wall safe, 4-digit code. Same one she used for our luggage, the storage unit, and poetically enough, our Netflix account. Her birthday. She never thought I'd return. Click. The door swung open, slow and quiet. Inside, a manila envelope, a copy of our prenup, and what I came for, the original property deed, tucked inside a legal folder with my name on the title, only my name, something she never updated after our temporary separation 3 years ago. I warned her back then, don't forget whose name is on the paperwork. She laughed it off, never filed a thing. Tonight, that laziness became my weapon. Julia watched as I took it out, laid it on the dining table, and snapped a photo with my phone. She didn't ask what I was doing. She already knew. I moved through the house like a surgeon, no wasted motion. Next stop, the router. I opened my laptop and pulled up the cloud camera feed. 2 angles, perfectly synced, now capturing nothing but an empty house. I exported the last hour's footage, 2 wine glasses, 1 slip of the tongue, her saying, "I could live here forever." Him replying, "What's stopping you, idiot?" I zipped the file and emailed it to Julia's contact at her law firm. Subject line, beach house footage, Exhibit A sent, no undo. Then I opened the back door and slid the deadbolt shut. They wouldn't be getting back in. Julia walked around the kitchen touching things with this strange reverence like she was in a museum of betrayal. She stopped at the sink and said, "He brought my son here. He washed his hands here, ate cereal here. I didn't have anything to say to that. So I turned off the hallway lights, left the ones in the living room on, just enough ambience to let them walk into the illusion that nothing had changed. Just enough normal to walk them right into the twist." I glanced at the clock. 7:42 in the evening. They were probably finishing up drinks, still laughing, still imagining a night of tangled sheets and whispered lies. She thought this trip would deepen the fantasy, that she could turn our house into their little getaway. But while she was sipping wine and playing mistress, I was executing a hostile takeover. This wasn't revenge porn. This was structural demolition. By the time they stepped back through that door, if they could step back through it, everything she thought she controlled would be under lock and key. Literally and legally, Julia was already texting her attorney again. "It's done," she typed. She looked at me with this calm, almost admiring expression. "You didn't even raise your voice." I folded the deed into my jacket pocket. I'm an engineer. I don't yell at broken structures. I just replace the foundation. Outside, the waves were crashing harder now. Inside, the real storm had already passed. Now came the silence before the detonation. At 9:06 in the evening, the bathroom door closed and the pipes whined like they always did when the hot water tap kicked in. I didn't need eyes on her to know what was happening. She never could resist a little mirror time, a check-in with her own reflection after a few glasses of wine and someone else's attention. That was her ritual, and tonight was no different. Except this time, she wasn't just fixing her hair. I'd been watching her phone light up for hours, notifications dimming and buzzing from the couch where Steven had left it. He hadn't even set a passcode. Cocky bastard. Thought nobody would dare open his secrets. Probably thought respect still meant something in his crumbling little kingdom. But it was her phone I was interested in now. She'd left it in her purse, which was dangling lazily off the kitchen chair, as if the whole house was hers. As if nothing could touch her here. No boundaries, no consequences. Julia had stepped out for a breath of fresh air. Said she needed 5 minutes. I think she didn't want to be in the house when the final string snapped. That left me alone. So, I took my chance. I slid her phone from her bag, tapped the screen. Face ID didn't register. It never did with me. But her fingerprint still saved from the time she thought it would be cute to keep mine and hers programmed in. Nostalgia, she called it. How poetic. The screen blinked to life. Open messages. Top conversation. Steven wineglass sweat droplets. Classy as ever. And there it was. Timestamp 9:07 in the evening. Message. Wish we could just live here. He'll never know. I stared at the text like it was a physical object, like I could reach through the screen and feel the stupidity radiating off of it. 14 words. That's all it took to erase 27 years of shared history. Not even a metaphor, just blunt, lazy treachery. He'll never know. That's the part that landed hardest. Not because it was cruel, but because it was insulting. She thought she was dealing with a man asleep at the wheel. A man too old, too worn down, too polite to look behind the curtain. But by the time that message landed, the wheels were already turning. Because 4 hours earlier, I'd walked into the title office in San Luis Obispo and signed a document she never expected me to sign. A full property transfer, revoking her access, removing her name, formalizing my sole ownership. Retroactively prenup supported, lawyer approved, notarized, filed, effective 12:01 in the morning. She was dreaming about a future she didn't know she'd already lost. She wanted this place to be her hideaway, her escape with her washed-up Romeo. She wanted to turn my walls into their love nest, wanted to gut it of memory and stuff it with new sin, and yet by morning, she'd legally be trespassing. I scrolled a little further. Older messages, things like, "He still doesn't suspect," and "I think he's given up." Stephen replying with, "Good. That makes it easier." Photos of wine. A picture of the tide taken from our deck. My deck. I didn't take screenshots. I didn't need to. I just placed the phone back exactly where I found it. And then I sat back in the guest room, watching the little vent-like glimmer with the hallway bulb outside. She returned to the living room 5 minutes later, laughing. She'd changed into that robe I folded for her earlier, the same one I bought her on our 20th anniversary. Ironic touch. She curled up on the couch beside Stephen like a satisfied guest in someone else's home. Julia returned moments later and didn't speak. She'd seen the glow in my face. She knew the tide had turned. "This house feels different now," she whispered. I nodded. "That's because it is. We didn't need confrontation anymore. No yelling, no speeches. We just needed the clock to strike midnight. And then she'd wake up in a dream that no longer belonged to her." The key slid into the lock at exactly 12 o'clock 3 in the morning. Quiet, no jiggling, no hesitation, just the confidence of someone who believes they're returning to their playground. Unseen, unjudged, untouched, the deadbolt didn't give. She tried again, a pause, then a whisper. "Maybe it's jammed." Stephen chuckled. "You sure this is your house?" His voice had that smug, late-night bourbon looseness to it, the kind of voice that assumes every door opens for him eventually. That was the last time he'd ever sound that sure of himself. I watched from the hall, barefoot, back to the wall while they tiptoed around the side to the rear entrance, the one I left unlocked on purpose, the final invitation to walk directly into their own execution. They slipped in, shoes in hand, whispering jokes, clinking with the leftover wine they'd swiped from dinner. Two teenagers in wrinkled skin, too old for this kind of stupidity, but too arrogant to know it. The light stayed off. They moved by memory. She flicked on the stove light. Dim, warm. He set the wine on the counter. "I should have done this years ago," she whispered, dropping her purse on the table. "You had to wait till he stopped paying attention," Stephen replied. They kissed. Julia stepped into the living room. No warning, no sound, just the sharp click of the overhead light switch. They both jumped like spooked animals. Stephen's body locked. He blinked like a man trying to recalibrate reality. My wife took a full step back, one heel catching the corner of the rug. Her purse spilled open. Keys, lip gloss, a crumpled receipt, a pair of earrings I'd never seen before. She didn't speak. Her jaw just opened slightly like she was trying to form a question, but couldn't find a single word that didn't taste like guilt. Julia stood calm, hair tied back, envelope in hand. She walked right past my wife, didn't even look at her, and stopped in front of Stephen. "You brought her here?" she asked. Her voice wasn't raised. Not angry, just level. The voice of someone too tired to pretend anymore. Stephen opened his mouth, closed it, looked around, probably hoping it was a dream or a prank or something he could throw money at. Then I stepped forward from the shadows. His face changed like he'd just seen a ghost climb out of the floorboards. My wife let out this tiny, involuntary noise. A soft, high-pitched inhale, like she'd just walked into her own funeral. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Julia held out the envelope. Thick, heavy photos, screenshots, dates, audio transcripts, itemized timelines. Every lie pinned down like a butterfly in a glass box. Stephen didn't take it. He just looked at it like it might bite. "I trusted you, Julia," she said, still calm. "Not just with me, with our son. You brought him here. You lied to his face. And for what? For this?" She turned slowly toward my wife, who was still frozen mid-step like a mannequin malfunctioning under fluorescent lights. "Was he worth it?" Julia asked. Silence. My wife blinked. Then finally she croaked out, "Mark, I can explain, just stop." And she did. Because for the first time in months, maybe years, she realized I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't suspicious. I knew. "You don't live here anymore," I said, calm, flat, like reading a grocery list. She looked toward the front door, saw her overnight bag already there, packed. I'd done it after they left. Took out the robe, folded her things, left nothing of hers behind except the echo of her voice and the stain of that wine glass. Then I walked to the kitchen, turned off the stove light and disappeared back into the guest room, leaving them under full house lights, fully exposed and utterly cornered. There was nothing left to scream about. The reckoning had already spoken. Julia was the first to move. She stood there for maybe 5 seconds after I disappeared down the hallway, long enough to let the silence thicken. Long enough for the shame to sink into Stephen's skin like oil on concrete. She didn't cry, didn't shake, just slid the envelope onto the coffee table and walked toward the front door with the quiet grace of someone who'd already buried the body. No dramatic final line, no tearful, "How could you?" Not even a glance back, just the sound of her heels brushing the floor. one steady step after the next. The door opened. Cold ocean air slipped in. Then it shut behind her. Stephen turned to follow her, but hesitated, still stupid enough to think maybe a few words could glue something back together. His mouth moved, but nothing came out. The master of smug, reduced to a wide-eyed kid who touched a stove and finally understood what burn meant. He looked at me once, a flicker of something between guilt and confusion. I didn't flinch, so he left. No coat, no bag, just shame and cheap cologne. Then it was just her. My wife, still standing in the middle of the living room, surrounded by pieces of a life she assumed would always be hers. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her. No, she'd shrunk like every lie she told had taken up more space than she realized. And now that they were gone, so was she. I didn't want it to be like this, she said quietly. I didn't answer. She stepped forward, hesitant hand half raised like she wanted to reach for something. Me. Maybe her old narrative. The version of me she thought would always be there, graying and obedient and blind. Mark. I raised my hand again. She stopped mid-word. You don't live here anymore, I said. Her eyes darted toward the hallway, toward the bedroom, the kitchen, anywhere but me. Then she noticed the front door and the bag. I placed it just outside, a neat little pile. Weekender tote, purse, keys, even her sunglasses folded neatly on top like some final insult. She stepped toward it slowly, opened the door, and froze. The doorframe, she always hated that it squeaked. Asked me a dozen times to fix it. I never did. Tonight, it was the only sound she made as she walked out. She paused on the porch, looked down at the bag, reached for the handle, and saw the small envelope taped to it. Her name scrolled in ink. Inside was the updated deed. She opened it right there, right under the porch light. I watched her eyes skim the first page, the second. I knew the line she'd find. Knew when she reached it because her shoulders fell and her face lost what little light it had left. Property owner Mark L. Withers, sole title holder. She didn't speak, didn't rage, didn't beg. She just stood there, still holding the papers like they weighed more than the bag at her feet. And then for the first time in a very long time, she looked at me. Not through me, not around me, but at me, and said nothing. Because what could she say? She walked off that porch like a stranger who'd taken the wrong exit on a highway and realized too late it led nowhere. No words, no fight. Just the slow shuffle of someone finally understanding. She hadn't just lost the house, she'd lost the story. And I didn't slam the door. I just closed it quietly and locked it 2 times. 3 weeks later, a message lit up my phone at 2:14 in the morning. How could you do this to me? No punctuation, no apology, just that one-line whimper typed out from whatever couch or guest bed she landed in, probably sent after 2 glasses of wine and a spiral through old photos she hadn't bothered to delete yet. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, because it was funny. Me do this to her? I scrolled back through months of silence. Not a single previous message, no effort, no question, just that one final gasp from a woman who set her own house on fire and then blamed the wind for changing. I didn't reply because there's a difference between silence and surrender, and mine wasn't weakness, it was closure. Last I heard, she was staying with a friend from her Pilates class, the kind who calls herself a healer but charges $300 an hour to tell you your chakras are misaligned because of masculine trauma. Fitting, really. My wife needed someone who'd validate her story, one where she was the misunderstood free spirit and I was the cold engineer who never expressed his passion. Stephen went crawling back to Julia. Didn't even make it a week. Apparently, Julia handed him the prenup addendum and said, "You sleep on the couch, you pee in a cup. She's not one for second chances. She's forensics, not faith." I respect that. The story spread fast because betrayal in small towns with ocean views travels like smoke in a glass house. By the second week, I had old neighbors texting me vague, thinking of you messages and ex-colleagues dropping hints about if you ever want to talk about what happened, but no one really asked. They already knew. She burned her character to the ground, and I didn't lift a match. I repainted the beach house, went with a deep gray and clean white trim, stripped the driftwood wreath off the door, donated every throw pillow she ever bought, burned the ones with tassels. Small act, but satisfying. You'd be surprised how flammable faux coastal chic decor is. I rented it out now. Not short-term, long-term tenants, quiet folks. A retired school teacher and her husband. They water the plants, keep the place nice. I never told them what happened there, but I kept the guest room. Didn't touch a thing. The same vent, same chair, same angle through the cracked blinds. Because I learned something watching those two slither through my house like they own the air. People like that don't believe in consequences. They believe in loopholes, in timing, in plausible deniability. They think no one's ever watching until they are. So yeah, I left the guest room exactly as it was, just in case someone else decides to test their luck. And I promise you, I'll be there. Lights off, blinds cracked,